Welcome back to another Love in Action. In yesterday's episode about meeting the love of your life and how it shows up astrologically, I looked at one particular couple that met 20 years ago. They just celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. So they've been longer than 20 years. And sort of looking at how it showed up in each of their charts, like what was going on for him, what was going on for her when they met. A little bit about what their charts look like together, in synastry, and using a composite chart to sort of look at the theme of their relationship, and then how the wedding showed up in each of their charts, just so you could get a feel for what would happen. In this episode, I'm actually putting myself under the microscope. So this is me and my husband. We've been together 13 years. So let's get cracking, shall we? I feel so vulnerable. So we're couple two. Okay, it's Mr. and Mrs. Munson. Anyway, the day he met her, so this is when Carl met me. What was going on for him? Well, he's got quite a bit. He's got Neptune and Chiron going through his 7th, and also the moon. Now, this is kind of important. Like Neptune and Chiron, they're slow moving planets. So they had already been in the 7th house, but really showing that he was going through quite a romantic phase, really wanting to meet somebody significant. And before he met me, he had about, I think, 3-year-long relationship. So he was really looking for a long-term partner, but they didn't come along. And I think I was the 4th. And, boom, there we are, So he also had a lot of planets going through his 5th. So we had Venus and the North Node going through his 5th house of romance, Vesta, and then Pluto. Pluto is a long, slow one going through his 5th. The 5th is all about relationships. Oh, she's Dogswood, shut up. The 5th is very much about relationships, early on, sensuality and children, and all the things that you're creating together. So yeah, that's quite important. He's also got Juno in a conjunction with Mars, which is coming in. So look, here's Juno, the goddess of marriage, coming very close to his Mars to do with his sexual feelings. And also, where's Jupiter? There it is. Jupiter and Uranus are in a conjunction. And it's right over his Ceres, which is very much about parenting and nurturing. And you'll see why it's important in a second. So the day I met him, I had lots of things. So I didn't have loads of stuff going through my 7th, but if you look, my descendant is in the sign of Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. And here's my Venus at 8 degrees Capricorn. And at that time, I had Vesta, Pluto, the North Node, and also Venus in a conjunction with my Venus. So it was very much a 7th house theme. Venus and the North Node were also in touch with my Sun and Mercury and Vesta. So it did feel like something significant was taking place. Now, Pluto's a slow mover. So Pluto was, coming into an alignment with my Venus. I was worried about it. As you can see, I've had Pluto going through all of that before. Which isn't very helpful. It can be very destructive having Pluto touch so much in such a short space of time. So I was thinking as I was meeting Carl, oh crikey, what could possibly go wrong here? But yeah, thankfully, Pluto was showing me a big change was about to occur in terms of my relationship status. So it was all very good. Also, Neptune and Jupiter and the moon were also in my 4th house. Now, as you can see, my 4th house is quite important to me. I've got my moon, my Ceres, Jupiter, and Juno there. Ceres is tucked right in between Jupiter and the moon, really showing that I always wanted to have children, lots of them in the 4th house. It's kind of a busy place. Ceres is very much about motherhood as well as nurturing. Motherhood is a very strong theme for Ceres. Also, people with the moon and Jupiter and Ceres in Pisces. Pisces is one of those signs that tends to want to have a lot more children. Given that Pisces is unboundaried, we're maybe not as strict, saying, oh, I just want one child and I want it to arrive at this time. People with a very strong, I've noticed people with a lot going on in Pisces tend to be quite relaxed. There was definitely this feeling of wanting children. And so it's interesting that at that time I had Chiron and Neptune and the moon transiting my 4th. And then I also had Jupiter had just recently gone into my 5th house to do with pregnancy and early romance and whatnot. And then Uranus had literally just crossed my 4th into my 5th house. So Uranus was saying, ta-da, time for change. We met very, very suddenly and very quickly. We met online, so Uranus is a bit of a theme for us. And within 2 weeks of chatting constantly online for about 60 hours or so, we agreed to meet, and we spent the weekend together. And then he's just said, look, please move in. I mean, so it's like the Uranus theme is very shocking. It's very unusual. It happened very quickly. And we quickly decided to have children. And so this really marked a huge shift in my life. I honestly didn't think that you could do so much in such a short space of time and go through such a fundamental change, but it really did happen. So as you can see, Uranus changing from my 4th to 5th was pretty significant. Ceres is absolutely important to us because of children. So there's a very strong Ceres, a Chiron and Uranus theme going on for us. So this is our composite chart. And as you can see, we've got our ascendant in the sign of Libra, which is ruled by Venus, which is very nice. Venus is in the 1st. So, it's obvious we're in love when you're around us. But what's very striking is our Sun and our Uranus are both, one's at 626 and the other's at 636. It's a very, very tight conjunction. Now, the composite chart isn't representing us. It's representing the thing that exists between us, which is our relationship. And so, when people meet us, I think they find us unusually open. Uranus is quite open, very much focused on consciousness, very much focused on freedom. And everything is very sudden. Like I said, we suddenly met, we suddenly came together, we very quickly created a family, which expanded and it expanded again. And we've moved around a lot. It's quite a restless energy. And we're very, we both work online. We both work on YouTube. We're both facilitators and coaches, and astrology in the new age, and new ways of thinking, new ways of being, like exploring consciousness, are really strong themes for us. And that is absolutely also Uranus and the Sun. The Sun is the personality of our relationship. So it really fits. So Sun, Uranus exact. Sun, the Uranus are also in a conjunction with the ascendant. Pluto's also conjuncting the ascendant. So our relationship, I think, probably does get projected on quite a bit. And it has quite a strong, maybe gravitational pull. It has we tend to attract a lot of people into our midst. Mercury, Venus and the Sun and Uranus are all in the 1st house. The 1st house is the relationship. So it's got quite a strong identity. Not necessarily glamorous, possibly a bit scruffy with Uranus and Mercury in there. So not quite as glam as, our Libra ascendant would have us believe. Moon is also square Sun and Uranus. So our moon is in the sign of Capricorn. So as open as we might seem, sort of underneath it all, we do have some bits where we're quite private and a little bit conservative, and a little bit low key. We don't have to go out and live it up. We're actually quite boring, actually. And that's all in a square to the Sun, which shows, that sometimes the energy blows up, and it's quite transforming. The moon is also in a square to Pluto. So there's a lot of transformational energy, and that's not comfortable. Sometimes we have some very big upswings and downswings, and that's how it is. We've also got Moon conjunct the IC, which is the part of the home, showing that the home is absolutely vital for us. Often, what I've noticed with a lot of charts is people that have Moon very close to the IC move around a lot. You know, the Moon, it changes sign every couple of days, and it goes around all of the signs of the zodiac in 29 days. So the moon is a fast mover, and both Carl and I have our moon in a conjunction with the IC. We've both moved around a lot before we met each other, and since we've been together, we've lived in so many more places than we've ever lived ever. And we've also migrated, which again is another Uranus theme. So, you know, we're living away from our country of origin. So very, very strong themes going on there. Also, we've got the vertex, again, what the universe wants us to focus on. The universe in our, like the universal energy of our relationship is about being committed to us, and also coaching and healing, because it's in a conjunction to Chiron, and Chiron is on our descendant. You know, it's something else, you know, this is obviously quite significant, obviously, to us, but we've got like planets on 3 out of 4 of our angles, which is creating a lot of change and a lot of doing within our life. So that's our composite chart. In our synastry chart, so comparing mine to his is in the middle here, and mine is on the outside. You'll see that we've got this very strong opposition between his Pluto and Uranus, and then my softer aspects, my moon, Ceres, Jupiter, and Juno. But he's also got his Saturn and Chiron here. So in the same way as the couple before in the previous episode, they had Juno connecting to Ceres and also Juno connecting to Saturn. So like Juno, the goddess of marriage, connecting to Saturn, all about formalizing a relationship. That's all there. Our moon and Uranus. So again, the Uranus connection is very strong. Our sun, like his sun and my Saturn are in a conjunction together. It's interesting, my Saturn and his sun, and then his Saturn and my Juno, Ceres, moon, and also Juno, you know, the Saturn energy is creating a bond that we can't get out of, or we choose not to explore. I think one of the biggest things about our charts together is our angles are in the same place. Now, you might not immediately think, what does that mean? Well, if, for instance, not so long ago, we had Uranus going in the sign of Taurus, and we also had Saturn going through the sign of Aquarius, and they were working square to each other, pretty much. And what this meant was, I had Uranus going over my descendant whilst it was going over Carl's midheaven. So Uranus is a planet of change and sudden ups and sudden moves and things like that. So I was having big change in my relationship because of the big changes in his career. And likewise, we had Saturn going over my angle to do with my home and my security, and he had Saturn going over his descendant. So likewise, I was appearing as a partner very serious to him, and probably a little bit depressing, because Saturn going over his descendant is often an indication that your partner is super serious, super depressing, possibly a bit limiting. And then, you know, in the home, I was experiencing this feeling of limitation in my home. So I was very relieved when that eased off. So it's not unusual to have, you know, like one of your planets over each other's angles. I have seen very bonded couples with their angles together, but it's not necessarily restful, because it means when one person is going through something, the other person is going through something with them. So it's an indication of us being together. But, you know, if both of you are always reacting to everything, that can also cause a little bit of difficulty, it's not necessarily that peaceful at times. It can be quite disruptive. But it does show that we have this very strong together we'll do everything. Venus and Mercury are in a trine to Mars and Neptune in the North Node. So there's my Mars, Neptune and the North Node. Like Mars and Neptune are sexual planets connected to his Venus, which is good. And then Sun, trine, Moon, Jupiter and Ceres. So his Sun is connecting to my guys over here. So there's a lot of connections for sure. On his wedding day, Juno, the goddess of marriage, was returning. He also had his Jupiter return going on, which is usually one of these lucky things that we go through. It's a happy time. Chiron was in a conjunction to Saturn. Now, we saw that yesterday, I'm pretty sure. So where's his Chiron? There is right over his Saturn, showing there's a healing, like we're healing each other. We're committed to healing each other. Mars, so he had the Mars and Mercury and Sun in a conjunction to his midheaven, which is pretty strong. He also had Saturn in a conjunction to his angle to do with home, showing that there is a change at home in our at-home identity. And then the North Node was conjunct his Neptune. Where's that? There. So again, this is quite a significant and strong set of circumstances. And then this is on my wedding day. So like he had Saturn going over his IC, I had Saturn going over my ascendant, showing that there is a change in my identity. And this is my first marriage, hopefully my only one. The North Node in my first house, about to go over, my ascendant. So that's kind of interesting. I also had Sun, Mars, Mercury in a conjunction with my descendant, Venus in my 7th, which is quite nice. Jupiter conjunct my vertex. I realize my typing is terrible in a lot of these. It's showing how much I rush around. Pluto is right on my Venus at that point, which is, again, that thing that was really bringing us together. I had my lunar return. So the moon was where it was at the time of my birth. And we had Neptune and Chiron over these planets here. So that's quite significant. So there's quite a lot going on there. I thought I'd just also put in our chart for our wedding day. So a bit like the composite chart, which shows our relationship, this is showing the identity of our marriage. The ruling planet for it is Mercury, which is up here in the 9th house. There's a lot going on in the 9th, which is kind of interesting because the 9th is about travel and movement and expansion. And of course, we both work in expansion and migration and higher thought and the sort of psychology of it. So, it's the perfect chart really to explore and express what we do. The descendant is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune is in a conjunction with it. And Jupiter's in our 10th house. So it feels like it's quite a good marriage chart to support our evolution, which felt good. The Sun is in a conjunction with Mars and Mercury and Pallas Athena and also Venus. Venus is in her own sign of Taurus, which is good. So she's very strong there. The moon is in a conjunction with Neptune and Chiron, showing quite a mystical event, like that the marriage really has a strong intuitive and healing and a kind of deep acting energy, which is what we were hoping for. Saturn is trine our planets here, strengthening our intuition and our spiritual evolution, which I quite like. And Pluto here is also strengthening our Sun. Jupiter is in a square to Chiron, which is interesting because Chiron, and I mentioned this in an earlier episode, we've got Chiron on our descendant, and At times we thought that was really too much energy, and I did consider let's like remarry and change our charts, because it felt like we were inundated with people that had a lot of pain going on. So a lot of it's really bizarre, but within a month of us getting married, 4 or 5 different members of our extended family all started to have very strong psychological upsets, which lasted a really long time. And that the irony of that was not lost on us. And, you know, we were both volunteering for a charitable trust that helped people with additional needs and their families with the psychological support. And when you're caring for so many other people and upset is coming in, it doesn't give you much space or time to sort yourselves out. So it did feel quite oppressive. Now, obviously, we've got Saturn in opposition to our Sun and Mars and Mercury. How we just thought there's always going to be something that's not very helpful in your chart. And, you know, and I will do more about marriage charts in another episode, but because it's one of the things I love looking for is the best marriage chart for somebody. I've worked with a few people on that. And, you know, you try to get the malefics like Mars, Pluto and Saturn out of the way. You try and find them in a helpful part of your chart. So we messed around with the time quite a bit to make sure Saturn wasn't in our second house to do with our money. And we were hoping we could get Pluto out of our fourth, but you know, he would have been in our fifth, which is about children. So we just put him in our fourth. It seemed a bit safer there. So, you know, you can have a little play around. We had 2 astrologers at our wedding, and they both said this is the best wedding day of the year. So we took that as being quite helpful. So anyway, that's our astrological relationship. I hope you found it interesting. So I guess you've now seen 2 episodes of 2 different couples coming together, and you can see how their main theme comes out in their chart. You know, one which is, 2 coaches were very much about healing and empathy. And I know they used a lot of parental tools to manage their family life. And there was a lot to cope with. And then our chart, which was sudden, quick migration, working online, lots of children. We'd have probably had more if we'd started like 10 years earlier. We would have probably ended up with a family of 5 or something. So, slightly different theme. And tomorrow we've got another couple that have a different theme, and they've come together. So I'm going to have a look at those charts too. But I hope that's helpful in understanding maybe how to decode your own relationship, the day you met, the day you might get married, or the day you did get married. But anyway, if I can be of any help, then you know where to find me. It's louisatannermunson@gmail.com. And you can also reach me. It's www.feelgoodastrology.com. Anyway, thanks for listening. Catch you in another session. Bye for now.